What's up, music fans of the internet? I'm Derek.
And I'm Kevin.
And we're last week's album, bringing you the only reviews with two different views. And this week we're talking about High by Royal Headache and asking the big question, does their unique brand of soul punk lift you up as promised? But before we go any further, we're going to start things off like we always do, drinking a beer. Cheers, Kevin, and everyone at home.
Cheers, Derek, and everyone at home.
All right, so Royal Headache is an Australian-based quartet whose members go by nicknames. I thought this was great. Shogun is on vocals, Shorty on drums, Law on guitar, and Joe on bass. Really, Joe? Really? You know what? I bet he's average, too. Just saying. High is the band's sophomore album, and it follows 2012's self-titled full-length debut, and they really kind of built a buzz around them in their home Australia by kind of taking soulful lyrics and combining them with punk sounds. So with that as a prelude, let's jump to sounds like. Kevin, what did you think?
Derek, I think this one sounds like the Smiths and the Ramones playing a show in your garage. What do you think?
I like that. I think it sounds like the Dead Kennedys and Descendents describing the highs and lows of past romances.
Nice.
All right, so a lot of good punk band influences already dropped, or at least that we referred to. So that brings us to key tracks. Kevin, what did you have?
I've got High, the title track, and Wouldn't You Know. What about you?
I have Love Her If I Tried and Carolina. Why don't you start us off with the title track?
Sure. It's got this really crunchy guitar, crooning vocals, punchy drums, grumbly bass. Really good line here. He says, I saw your skin and bone. I knew you were alone. And now I want to be with you. I looked into your eyes where so much was disguised. And now I want to be with you. It's a sweet little song about how love can make you feel high, if you didn't get that already. And I think it's just a really great introduction to their sound. This will be one of the first tracks you probably want to listen to, and maybe that's why it's early on the album. What about Love Her If I Tried, Derek?
This one features, again, crunchy, high-octane electric guitars, pounding drums. The anthemic chorus really stood out to me. There was an additional electric guitar line that really kind of added greater texture, and the strong vocal melody just really stood out. The lyrics decry unrequited love. One line I really liked, he says, because I know that she don't love me, I can tell. I can barely bear to let her go. Just nice play on words there. Again, the chorus, though, was really a strong point, really jumped out to me. Tell us about your next one, Kevin.
Yeah, Wouldn't You Know? It has this really fuzzy guitar picking at the intro and then throughout, popping drums, twinkling keyboard, really earnest vocals, and the theme here is still about love, a little less happy-go-lucky. Here's a line to give you a taste. Baby, wouldn't you know, because you ain't never been loved. Now you're running just because something has finally come through. So he's still in love. We're not sure if she is on this track. And for this one, the keyboard really takes center stage, namely late in the track, and it gives it this really sort of Doors sound and feel, which I really dug. And what about Carolina, Derek?
Carolina, this one at the beginning features this strummed acoustic guitar, kind of meshed up with this electric guitar to cool effect. There's kind of a lead riff that comes in later, but really overall, the much slower pace and kind of the inclusion of the acoustic guitar here really kind of reminded me of Ryan Adams or Wilco, circa Wilco AM. As I kind of referred to, this really kind of stood out the much lower pace here, but I thought it was really kind of done in a positive way. It felt like a natural progression, not like a change up, after being fed a whole lot of fastballs, to use a completely unrelated sports metaphor. Excuse me. Lyrics describe a complicated title character. Obviously, Carolina. One line, the first couple lines really stood out to me. He says, Carolina thinks she's one of us. She's been waiting for the train down by the bus. She's got the kind of heart you can trust and eyes that break your mirror in disgust. So a really kind of interesting track here. Very complicated Carolina character. And I just kind of scratched the surface there, so you should really check that one out. All right, so that brings us to best lyric. Kevin, we've already kind of touched on a few, but why don't you tell us what you had?
Yeah, I am going with one from Wouldn't You Know, although a different line than I talked about earlier. Here he says, chased by wolves and driven by stars, you're surprised you've come this far. What are you hiding inside your heart? Is it so bad, baby? It sets you apart. And he doesn't go too poetic very often on this album. I think a lot of times it's more about emotion than being clever with the lines. But when he does get a little deep, it gets really, really good. I think that's a prime example here. What about you?
I'm going one with from Little Star, and I think it's one of the very rare moments where he does get poetic. This is really kind of a brief line, but I think says a lot in its few words. And he says, real friends will save a place for you. That's it. They'll save a place for you. That's, I think that just speaks volumes. And it kind of stood out to me in this album, a lot of emotion, especially love, unrequited, this, that, and the other. So this one really stood out to me just because it was very poignant and different from everything else that had been displayed on the album. All right, so that brings us to overall rating and asking the big question, does their unique brand of soul punk lift you up as promised? Kevin, why don't you start us off?
I will start with answering the question. I think for the most part, it does lift you up as promised. The album keeps things pretty high in general. There's the occasional downer track here and there, but they have this really interesting mix of soul and punk. It somehow works really well. As far as overall rating on the prose side, I think the vocals have come a long way. They're not as buried or muffled as on their debut album. And there's more variety this time around. There's both rockers and ballads, slower numbers, like you mentioned, Derek. On the con side, it's a little short for me at just 29 minutes. And while the songs vary from one to the next, they don't very much within themselves. They're kind of short and compact and sort of simple construction-wise within the song. So overall, going to give it a 3 out of 5. I didn't find it an addictive high, but it's one I'll definitely come back to from time to time. What do you think, Derek?
Nice. Yeah. I guess to answer the question, I totally agree. Yeah, it keeps you, it'll pick you up as promised. Maybe after it might have, the more you listen to it, maybe it won't pick you up as much. Diminishing returns potentially, but great listen. I really liked just the way the lyrics and the theme of them, a lot of love, was presented against this, very in-your-face punk sound. It's not often those two are done together in a good way. It didn't come across as like the cheesy late 90s pop punk. This was not New Found Glory or Good Charlotte or anything like that. However, on one downside, I think the lyrics focus a little too heavily on love. Never really seem to explore any other themes or subjects, but obviously they're still growing, so maybe that's something in their future. Overall, I found this very intriguing, so I'm giving this a 3 out of 5 as well. So there you have it, 3 out of 5 from both Kevin and myself. So that's a combined 6 out of 10. So we're not low on high. We'll say that about Royal Headache's latest album. Thanks again for joining us here at last week's album. Don't forget to subscribe, where we're bringing you 2 reviews with 2 different views. Shout out to the podcast, and until next time, I'm Derek.
And I'm Kevin. Cheers, guys.